welcome back to another edition of Inside Great Lakes Sailing. My name is Greg Norman, your host. Well, one of the big subjects that we spend very little time talking about is foiling. We're going to get a chance today to talk to one of the experts. We're going to spend some time with Tyler Bjorn, who is the WASZP North American Director of Foil Sailing. They were just doing a continental race down at Pensacola, and we're going to talk to him from Montreal a little bit about the WASZP. He represents that company. We're going to talk about the switch foiling. With the advent and success of SailGP in recent times, foiling is sort of gaining popularity. So we're going to kind of spend some time with him talking. I think it's a very interesting conversation. He was a former Canadian Olympian in a starboat in 2012. His father was sort of had his hand in the development of the laser. So this is a family that's been around sailing and the innovation of sailing certainly in the last 50 years. We had a chance to talk to him, and I think it'll be real interesting. Second part is here you can see some video of Reliance going in the water a couple of days ago. We've got her back at Crescent and back at the dock. We've got to spend this next week cleaning her up, and hopefully we get out and have some opportunities. We are going to spend some time on the road with the boat and be a little more proactive than some of these long Zoom interviews. When we get people like Tyler to get a chance to talk to us, or Peter Harkin, we want to be able to get the insight, but we'll do some fun. The boat we did some ceramic spray on the outside, put some new signage on the boat, and we're looking forward to a really terrific summer. By the time you see this part of the show, I will have come back from Manhattan on Friday. James Sheehan, the New York Attorney General for the Charitable Division, was supposed to talk a little bit about John Sweeney's complaint over the America's Cup being not a charitable event with the New York Charities Division. We had a chance to talk to Mr. Sheehan, and we wanted to kind of clarify that the reality is that the complaint is still ongoing. There is a file number. There was no information as it relates to the complaint as a sort of stopping the America's Cup. They're still researching. So at this point, it's still a live investigation, but it's going to be a little while before we hear anything. I know there was some conversation that Mr. Sheehan might have the opportunity to talk a little bit about this complaint. And the critics are certainly pointing fingers. I can tell you if this is being handled in a very professional manner, very straight-ahead manner, whether or not any action's taken. By giving it a file number in the courts of New York, he's going to have to give some kind of an answer, but I wouldn't expect one for much more than 6 months. So just an update. We wanted to bring you back some information on that. Hopefully it was going to be a breaking story. It is not, but it's an interesting discussion over the last couple of months. And we will continue to follow the story as a lot of other organizations have. So that being the case, the other thing I want to mention is that we had talked last week about sort of an introduction of a charitable fundraiser for both Challenge the Wind, Detroit Community Sailing Center, and Spectrum Sailing, a really wonderful organization down in the Ohio area that provides sailing opportunities for autistic children and teenagers. We're going to announce that next week. We're getting our ducks in order. We get this opportunity with Tyler and kind of chasing the John Sweeney story. So we'll bring that all to you next week, and to make sure that we bring it after we get the boat cleaned up, and we'll take care of all that. And we look forward to a great summer. So up next is Tyler Bjorn, and we'll talk a little bit about foiling.
Center for Safe Sport, ending abuse is not just our job, it's our promise.
Welcome back. We're spending some time with one of the coolest guys you ever want to have a chance to have a conversation with, and that is Tyler Bjorn, who is the North American Product Manager for WASZP, developing the fleet. And we're going to talk a lot about foiling today and a variety of suggestions. You were just in Pensacola for a big race, and we're going to talk about why foiling makes sense, a little bit about your history, because I think when people hear your history and your family's history to this whole sport, I think they're going to freak with all of the sort of 6 degrees of separation, which I think is really cool. And it turns out we actually know a couple of the same guys because of whatever the reason. and then maybe finish the conversation off with why television is important if sailing's going to grow. But that's not the point. Talk briefly about Pensacola and what happened down there.
Well, Pensacola was North America's first international WASP Games, our biggest foiling event ever in North America, and we actually had three back-to-back-to-back events in the area. First was the what we'll call the All-Star. So we brought in top 8 females and top 8 males from around the world, and ran the sprint style competition, so very SailGP-esque, and put $5,000 up for grabs for each division, and went for it. And they had about 18 to 23 races over 2 days. And the Aussie kid Louis Tilley won the men, and Hawaiian Pearl Latanzi defended her title in the women's.
I'm
And
curious from your perspective, having the experience that you've had, what makes a good WASP sailor or a good foiling sailor as compared to maybe somebody on a flatboat?
Um, I
Balance?
mean, look, sailing, all classes have their own peculiar pieces to make them make you great, whether it's a starboat, a laser, 470, etc. Foiling, look, you got to be curious. You got to be comfortable with speed, balance, athleticism is a component, and this, you know what? I look at it and it's so much fun, right? The speeds that they're going is exhilarating, and I haven't done it myself, so I can't tell you exactly. But when I watch it, it is definitely something that I look forward to trying very soon and getting that experience. But so many times I've described the sport to people, and then they always come up with the final question, going, "Well, how fast do you go?" And I would be like, "Well, like eight." 8 miles an hour, 10. They're like, that's it. How's that fun? My kid's skateboard goes better than that. So now we finally have a class of boat that really goes fast. And it's exciting, mandatory helmets. We someone over in Europe just broke 30 knots speed on the WASP. So it's coming along, and what's nice to see is the skill sets as the class evolves with more and more participation and skill set development. We're seeing faster speeds, closer racing. So it's getting more and more exciting as time goes by.
Pensacola is fast becoming a sort of Newport, if you will, in terms of just sort of a hub for sailing. American Magic's put a lot of money into that. It's also an unbelievable geographic position to be able to sail. Just thoughts on what you thought with Pensacola and it becoming this hot spot for sailing.
Um, Look, my first experience with Pensacola was for a foiling event. A friend of mine was going to try these 69 Fs, uh, and they asked me to come and sort of give some support. And I said, okay, where are we going? And they're going Pensacola. I went, where is Pensacola? I never heard of it. And so we got there, and throughout this sort of 3 4 day event, the club was totally hospitable, great property. The town was fun, relaxed, plenty of housing, and the body of water that you can sail on was huge. 5 miles, 6 miles wide and long, and great sort of flat water, great foiling conditions, and you had American Magic in the area, which always, it's like if you want to be a car racer and you're practicing in your go-kart and you're right by the Ferrari manufacturer or something, you know what I mean? Like
Right.
you can't help but get excited and seeing them out there racing. And right then and there, I was like, this is a venue that we can do something at. And I held a camp. This was November 21. So, no, November 22. And then in March, I held a camp there and got to know the club members. And, we had a little event with American Magic and their moth sailors. And right there, we started the discussions of hosting international WASP games. And 3 years later, here we are hosting the games last month. And we had about 70 sailors coming in, and it was an amazing event. We had, like I said, we had 3 events, and during those 3 events, which was like a 10-day period, we completed 89 races. So
Wow.
that's
A
a
lot
lot.
races. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of racing, and we use the race sense, so all the technology, so really efficient racing, no general recalls, and look, we had a great time.
We cover the GL52s in the summer. We do a pretty good job of doing that. They had their first swing through Pensacola within the last couple of weeks, last month. And the guys coming back are just saying, that's going to be a permanent home for them now, and just how terrific it is. And obviously, CLGP has also said that that's going to be a home for them. So it's a growing area. Before we get
Well,
into the,
it was
go
a
ahead.
lot of it was a lot. It's interesting. It's really interesting because back then in sort of like I said, 2022, there were just conversations. Early 23, there was talk. Hey, we imagine we had a Sail GP event here, or imagine we had a training facility out of this in this area. Because I mean, again, it's not a hugely well-known venue, so the housing's there's plenty of housing there. It's like if you train in Miami, it costs, right? You train in
Right,
Pensacola, it's a lot more affordable, so you can get a lot more days there.
right.
And 3 years later, here we go. We got America Magic owns a team. The CLGP wants to it's a training facility starting in September. We've just hosted the first World Foiling Championships with the WASP, and more to come.
Before we get into the specifics about foiling, I want to just go a little background. You're a 2012 member of the Canadian National Olympic team as a star sailor. Your dad started as a star sailor. You have some background as how the laser got off the shot. So just give us 30 seconds of what your background is, because I was shocked and amazed at your connection to greatness, to both from 6 degrees of separation from folks you knew, or just folks in the family. So you have an extensive.
Well, I was fortunate enough. My family was a part of the creation of the laser. So you had the designers and Bruce Kirby, Hans Fogg, and my father was Ian's really good friend. They went to the Olympics together in '72, and they tasked my father with putting, as they say, put the boat on the map. And the great thing about the laser, you could try and say that it took a magical marketing genius, but you know what? The thing came out and they couldn't make them fast enough.
Okay.
We were building them in Montreal, and there was like a 24-hour production going day and night. So it was really interesting to see that. And that, when you grow up in that environment, I lived right beside a yacht club, so it was really easy for me to get a laser to sail throughout the summer, and that's what we did. So I did sailing pretty much all my life, and my brother and I both went to the Olympics. So like he was in 2000 in the Star, and then myself in 2012. He also went to the 2003 America's Cup with Alinghi. So that's how we sort of connected with Russell in bringing the Canadian Sail GP team to fruition in 21. And yeah, I mean, sailing's just been a great piece and opened up a lot of doors. And I thank a lot to my parents who anywhere that I've gone in the world, when I introduce myself, it's always been nice that when they hear the name Bjorn, they go, "Wait, is your father Peter?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, what I mean? And everywhere, what I mean? Whether I
Right.
was in Brazil training, in Bermuda, coming off the water, running into someone who just came off a cruise ship and just happened to be visiting the yacht club, and there they were, one of the first San Diego dealers of the laser. So it's been really cool.
That's an interesting process. I had a chance. We've interviewed both Phil Robertson and Fred Pye. I got to know Fred a little bit in Chicago, first couple years that they were there. And if you haven't met him, he's an interesting character, but what a wonderful guy, and just a
Look,
gentleman. He's a really good
he
guy.
he opened the door,
Yeah.
right? Like it's interesting to think about the Sail GP. Look, the first version of Sail GP Canada, it didn't last as long as we wanted, but we got a new owner, and I think everything's going really well with that group. But if that door wasn't opened from a guy like Fred Pye, we wouldn't be a part of what is Sail GP. And I think it's really important that Canada is actually there. We're a part of the conversation, and we have our team, and we've won a few events, so we know we have the skill set. And I look forward to seeing a lot of really good stuff going on with this team and the evolution and how we are going to hopefully one day get some more Canadians on board.
We've been in San Francisco, Los Angeles, Chicago, certainly because we were there for the first two there, and had a chance to go to New York last year and watch that. It's catching on, but Chicago is a good example. The first year you sell something in the neighborhood of 60,000 tickets. Next year you sell somewhere in the neighborhood of 20,000. Well, you're not coming back because at the end of the day, Larry Ellison's still going to make sure that it's profitable, or at least it's standing on its own 2 feet. It becomes that issue. We go back then to Barcelona from last year, which is kind of with the conversation we're having. SailGP seems to be a very friendly television product, which is one of the reasons it's gaining in a lot of the rest of the world. Foiling is going to be I think a television product because of the way it looks. And if you go back to Barcelona, and we've had a lot of those conversations with this show, foiling looks better on television than flat bottom boats because it's too far out in the water and all the things that go with it. Is the future of foiling tied to television, or is it just the process of where it's at?
Well, I don't know if it's tied to TV, but I mean, if you want to gain popularity, obviously the best way you're going to get it. I mean, again, this is all like we were having a conversation earlier just about technology.
Right.
We've always been trying, the sport has always been trying to get on TV with the America's Cup, maybe back until '87 when it was really trying to get going. If you don't know the sport, it's not that interesting when they're only going 5 miles an hour, 8 miles an hour, and all the different technical terms that people use. But with YouTube and all the platforms that we have out there, you don't need NBC or CBS or whatever, Fox News or whatever it is to see the sport. You have all these other platforms, and then just foiling just makes it more exciting, right? Speed, right? They're not watching cars go slow around a racetrack. They're trying to get more and more speed because it's exciting. And I think the foiling piece is really making the sport look cool. It's exciting. We just saw the Kiwis have they had a pretty significant accident, if you will, or collision. Thank God, no one was really hurt, but I mean, that's part of the excitement. And when you have close quarter racing like they do, and the speeds they're going with the amount of boats they have in the course, collisions are going to happen. And I think that's part of the sport and that's part of the excitement. We just have to be careful, make sure we have the right safety precautions in place when that does happen.
Roller derby, you got to wear a helmet. Is it a helmet when you're wearing? If you have to wear a helmet, is it sailing?
Well, I think that's just kind of cool, man. I mean, I think that's what excites the kids too, right? I got to wear a helmet. It's dangerous. Like look out, this is what I'm doing. I'm brave. And again, the excitement of the sport is the speed, and I think that is where I can't see foiling going away as a sort of something that just is a happenstance. This is a part of the sport that's there. 50% of the Olympic class is foil, and I can see it getting there, especially with the proposals coming from other foiling classes saying we want to be a part of the Olympic Games.
The Swedish Sailing Federation has put forth a couple days ago, put forth the switch class to the Olympics, and it's a little bit smaller boat than the WASP or the Moth. And it's kind of a standalone. And in their press release, they're very clear that it's a sort of kind of boat in competition made for television. They tie that into their press release. So I don't know that it's married, but at least it certainly is second cousins.
Well, but look, the Olympics are clearly tied to profitability and visibility. Sailing has never been one that's really been able to capture any type of attention, other than maybe in 2012, where they actually had the finals on the right in front of what they called the node, this sort of embankment where they sold tickets that people watched. But you usually, like you said earlier, they go really far offshore. You can't really see it, so you don't really get much visibility. So we have to find a way to bring it to the public, and I think foiling just makes it that much more exciting. Again, it's all about the speed, as far as I'm concerned. I was thinking a lot about collegiate sailing, and I was just happy to watch. And I think it's amazing what they're doing with college sailing and the amount of sailors that go through and people that get introduced to the sport. But I don't think I was watching a race and it was in like 5 knots, and they're in 420s or FJs, and I'm just like, you're never going to sell that
Right.
to a TV. But if you had something where it was, Boston College and Boston University and Yale and Stanford and UCLA, and they're all racing these WASPs, I think that is something that you could probably sell to TV or some type of platform. And again, it's all about capturing it with the technology that we have. So you may not get the TV screen, the TV cameras, but you have all the drones and on water capability, on boat capabilities. The GoPros. I mean, there's so many actual pieces of technology that we can actually show the sport, and it's exciting. Now we just have to find a way of covering the cost to produce these events, and I don't think that's far down the line.
The top end of the sports silo is working. The switch, the stuff with the Wasps, looking at Olympics, is growing really well. You were
Yep.
always involved, with your family's involved with that sort of super growth of the laser in the beginning. So you've got some ideas and sort of some background to be able to make those comparisons. Let me ask the very simple question. A switch, what's a WASP cost? And here's the point. If I'm going to grow the sport, don't I have to grow it through junior uh, sailing centers, junior programs?
Yep.
And how
Yep.
many WASP, how many 420s can I buy as compared to a WASP? And if cost is a factor, does that matter? Am I making something that is maybe not as big as it should be?
Um, Well, look, one of the aspects of junior sailing, I will talk more on the U.S. side versus how the Canadian programs evolved. But you had boats like the 420, right, or the Club 420, which it had a bumper on the front. It was really beefed up. It had a telephone pole as a mast, and the whole key was that this can take the pounding of a junior program. So
Okay.
you learn on these boats, but anything else would be too fragile that, because of the mentality of how to run the program, a boat like a Wasp is probably a little too fragile to just bring into the sailing program. And you have to have a certain level of skill to sail. So you can't just
Yeah.
sort of come out of nowhere, jump into the Wasp and go. So I don't necessarily see it as the ultimate junior sailing intro boat, but we have started a program which basically we call hubs. So we're introducing or implementing the hub program. So if you're an interested place, take Corpus Christi, for example, is one of the latest hubs, or Peninsula Sailing, Richmond Yacht Club. They're going to be places where when I get an inquiry from someone who wants to know where can I go try a WASP, we're going to send them to the hubs. And at these hubs, you'll have boats that you can rent, and you'll have coaching available so they can teach you the actual fundamentals and get you for your first flight. And then usually what happens, you get your first flight, you get that sensation of flying. Because right now, if you're sailing, say, a laser, you're never more than a half foot really off the water. But when you sail a WASP, you get about 5, 6 feet above the water. So not only do you get the sensation of the flight and the speed, that exhilaration just sort of, I think it really hooks you pretty quick. And then you follow the regular protocol. Practice makes perfect. You just got to get time on the water,
Okay.
and the hubs will be the place that you will get the access and the teaching.
All right, that makes perfect sense. So it's really, for my questions, and obviously an apples and oranges discussion. But what I also find interesting, and I think this is a good process, there's a couple of unnamed yacht clubs in Lake Michigan who bought one for their junior program. And it turned out, as they kept track of it, it turns out the adults were using it more than the kids, not because the kids couldn't use it, it's the adults had it out. They had it out every day. Just they fell in love with it. And that was kind of the point, because of the speed, because of the opportunity. And they recognized it what it was. And at least in one club, they purchased two more for this year. It was kind of we'll put this thing in the corner and see what happens to it. And then, it's booked. The sun comes up, the sun goes down, and somebody on the boat, which is
Yep.
great for the boat itself. And again, they get, self-taught, however it works. And I just thought that was a really interesting comparison. What does a new WASP cost? I'm just curious.
New WASP is 15 US.
15?
15.
Okay. So
15,000 US.
it's not,
And it comes in the box, and you really, other than adding your Vacros unit, if you will, there's nothing else to add. So
okay.
it comes complete. And the beauty about the box that it comes in, the fiberglass box, is that you can actually stick it on a plane and fly it anywhere. And that was probably the biggest catch to me, was as I got introduced to the Hawaiians who were flying around the country with their WASP for $400. You could fly Hawaii, New Jersey. you can never think about doing that with your 29er or your laser. And I couldn't believe it at first until we started doing it. And that's probably one of the beauties of it. So you can go anywhere in the world with your WASP. You don't have to worry about chartering, and it's just going to be on a flight. So it's not like it's on a ship and it needs to get 2 weeks or whatever to get to wherever it's going. It'll be on the flight behind you.
It's a remarkable point because one of the things it said in the switch, you could in a normal railroad car, you could put 20 of these switches. And one of the biggest arguments for SailGP on the 38s is you could put two 38s in a box, but you couldn't with the bigger boats. So transportation from city to city became a huge process, and more importantly, a cost that they never anticipated. Again, you don't think about those kind of things, but it was kind of the convenience of being able to move around and having those things. I think is something. This is just a question hit me. I was fortunate enough to get about a 45-minute ride on the Denmark boat in the first year in Chicago. So I've got my helmet and I got all that stuff as part of it. I did somebody a favor. They did some favor for me. Going 32, 33, 34 miles an hour, because it wasn't a great wind day, but it was still fast. I was scared, pardon the expression, scared shitless because I wasn't sure what's going to happen. So here's my point. You get a boat up. You've seen some of the crashes that we got with the SailGP boats. If you're up going 25 miles an hour and that front end goes, it's a little bit like going over the handlebars on a bike when we were kids. Fair. I think that's a fair point.
Fair enough. Yeah. Yeah.
Have you seen that with WASPs? Have you seen that with some of the smaller foiling boats? Serious crashes.
Sure. I mean, that's part of the excitement is we get the spills. The kids. I mean, again, you capture the spill, and then the kids like, look what I did. I mean, I survived that, and it's part of the fun, right? And
right.
At least you're filing into the water, so it's got a little more of a cushion, if you will. But again, it's part of the process of learning how to foil. If you want to be a top racer, you have to, as any sport, you have to push the limits, and to push the limits means you're going to go as fast as you can, just on the verge of crashing, but not crashing. Like downhill skiing. You're going as fast as you can go, just so you don't fall. Like the crazy Canucks.
Ken Reed, guys I grew up with because I'm a ski coach in the winter. We went back this year to Beaver Creek, and it was funny because I went down it when I was like 30, and there's a speed trap, and I was like probably going 75 at the time. We went down it this year kind of as a fun part of it, and I sort of I was doing 100 miles an hour. It turns out I was doing 51. So as you get older, speed goes less, at least in your mind, because you're afraid if you crash and burn coming down some of those kinds of things. The question I want to ask you, those are pushing the sport, obviously, are those in television, those guys that want to sell more boats, and just guys who are interested in a different kind of sailing. As you talk to the guys at SailGP, the sustainability with the environment and all that goes with it, that's kind of what they're selling. Does foiling 10 years from now, 20 years ago, become part of sailing, or is it sailing? Does it take over from, or is it just another wonderful opportunity within the thing we all call sailing?
I think it's it's the fun aspect, another fun aspect of the sport. And again, it's still new, right? We're talking CLP was 2019, the WASP was 2016. I mean, we're still in its infancy of that aspect of the sport. But sailing has always been, as like you said, as you get older, you sort of contemplate a little bit more, and you put more thought to stuff that's going on. And man, there's so many boats that you can sail, right? I mean, there's a 31 footer, 32, the 33 and a half, the Star, the 470. I mean, there's so many out there that everybody has some type of affinity to one particular class versus another. So I don't see foiling taking over and not having what we'll call historical style of sailing.
Right.
But they're still going to be building monohulls. But if you look at every aspect of the sport at its top end, whether it be ocean racing, match racing, fleet racing, foiling is dominating every aspect. So it is even I think there was one that was in the Baltic race not this summer that was this 80-foot monohull with foils inside. You know what I mean? Like, it had a full interior, custom luxury interior, but it had foils. So it's coming. I think it's just everybody's enamored with the fact that you can just go faster, right? Instead of going, taking you 2 days to get to a certain place, it's taking you half a day because you got foils. So it's transforming maritime use, if you will. One of the guys that we competed against in 2012, his name is Ian Percy. Right after, I think probably the Bermuda Games, or the San Francisco, the America's Cups. Artemis just went into more R&D, and they're creating taxis and all the different aspects that you use boats, the pilot boats in the harbors or the big ports. How much fuel are they wasting because they're just heavy little boats. They're just making these little foiling boats that save a lot on energy and the electricity, electric boats and all that kind of stuff. So it's really interesting to see where it's taking the sport, but just taking industry as well in the maritime.
Have you come to this late to cover racing? I'm a sailor my whole life, but I certainly know much about racing. They get rid of the star in the Olympics, and if you talk to anybody in the star class, they almost cry because it's not part of that process. If you look at an opti to a 420 in a junior sailing program, something that I ran our program for 4 years, it doesn't, again, look outside looking in, it doesn't seem compatible. You go from an opti to a 420. So my point is that some of the decisions that those who are running sailing and operating it, they've made some pretty dumb decisions, yet you see this and you see the growth from this process, and you hope sometimes they can just get out of their own way and make better decisions.
Well, it's look, you make decisions at the time with the information you have. So
Good
whether
point.
that's 2000 to 2012, 2015, whatever the decision you're making at the time, are they made by the most qualified individual? Not necessarily all the time. It's usually it's an older individual has more free time, so they want to bring back the version they knew. So they want to bring back the old school.
Right.
Star guys, right? I mean, I mean, that's probably one of the older designs out there. Fantastic, love the boat. Look, I mean, three of my family members, we all went to the Olympics in it, so we have a definite connection to it.
Right.
But the technology is coming forward now. Again, we look at with the WASP. The challenge we run into with the WASP in its growth right now is just that where does it lead? Right. So if you asked me this 2 years ago, does it lead to an F50? That's a tough call to go from a WASP at the caliber of the WASP sailor 2 years ago. Can they go to an F50? No, I mean, they're just not, they're not ready yet. So there was a big gap in between being what was the top WASP sailor to being an F50 driver or sailor. And at the same time, it was all new sailors. Now 2 years have gone by. There's a lot more individual race teams being created, whether it's in Italy or the States or Norway. The skill set is getting a lot better. So again, from my first experience with WASP sailors to now, I am incredibly impressed with the skill set that these sailors have. That now you are seeing the 2024 WASP Games champion is now with Rockwell as a reserve, so he is getting some development. Pearl Latanzi, who is now two-time WASP world champion, she went from the WASP Games down to Brazil, so she's already in that mix of the Rockwell team, or American Magic, or sorry, yeah, American Magic, Rockwell, or whatever the team is. But you are seeing this transition of the sailors, because not only are they getting used to the speed, understanding the foils and how they work and the efficiency, we're also using a unit called the Vacros, which gives you data. And I think that's probably one of the more important pieces, that you need to understand how to extrapolate the data to your advantage, right? Because I mean, data, everybody wants more data. How much more data can we have so we can solve the problem better? Now we're getting so much data, and I'm not even going to speak to it effectively because I haven't really dove into this whole data piece. But when I see, the speeds and the angles and how are you tilting forward and your heel, all those kind of pieces are really coming in, that if you're not implicated into the data, you're not going to be able to probably be one of the best, because you're just going to be missing that one little piece. Now, how's that going to affect the beginning? But, you are seeing sailors getting to the skill set that they are relevant now in the discussion. And especially every year that goes by, every F50 sailor is getting that much older. And it's weird to say, but, Outer Ridge or Slingsby, they're not spring chickens, right? They're all in their 40s,
No,
late
the
mid
point
40s.
The point, I think
So
you can thank Oracle for really bringing this to the forefront. I mean, one of the things we did when we did the first Sail GP thing, we went inside a data center in Chicago, in the harbor,
yeah,
and he's telling us that it was like 1.5 billion parts per second that could be
yeah,
delivered to these drivers. But one of the questions I asked at the time, which is really kind of crazy, I said, "This is the first event you're going to have in freshwater as compared to all the saltwater you've been sailing in." Oh no, we've already
mhm.
factored that in as part of that deal, and it literally pushes the button and whatever they've got to do. And then when you're measuring in microseconds and doing some of those kinds of things, we can thank a technology company for bringing us technology that obviously benefits the sailors. I think that's a huge point that sometimes gets
Well,
lost. And now fleets, even the 52s, it's videotaping, and they're all sitting down together as a group to learn because they want to be more competitive. It's
yeah.
it's it's the way to go. It really
It's,
is.
I mean, like you said, so my first SailGP experience, I think the key or one of the pieces was just like you said, whatever billion units or data points per second are being fed into the computer, the supercomputer, and what do we do with it? And at the beginning, you would go down rabbit holes that just were. I don't know where you're going, right? No one knew where they're going, but then all of a sudden think of it like hockey, right? Analytics. Now all of a sudden each team has one person who's probably never played the sport, but man, are they loving the sport and they know analytics. So they're bringing all these different aspects into the program. So now all of a sudden, and this is what really got me attracted to Sail GP was, so when I came back from the games, I got back into coaching. And after about 7 years of coaching, I just found that it was hard to really motivate the sailors to want to go to that next step once they turned 18 or 19 and got out of the youth. Where do they go next? And there was, parents that aren't in sailing just go, well, there's no career in sailing, so you need to focus on your education, if you will. But Sail GP brought in that whole new component where it wasn't just a driver. There was the driver, there were the people on the boats, there were the technicians, there were the videographers, the reporters, the managers. Then you also had the green space, if you will, trying to figure out how to help the environment. So you had so many actual jobs. The STEM program really came into play. So now since SailGP brought in not just one job, 5 jobs, now there's a whole team of it could be up to 20 that each person needs that technology. And one of the key pieces is understanding what is this data and what are we getting out of it. And I think that's probably an ever evolving component.
But it also raises the question, if you look at the history of sport, there are some of us that are born with gifts that others don't have in terms of sailing. Think of Connor and the feel that Dennis has. You can crunch all the numbers, you can have all the rest of it, but you can't get lost in the factors of technology if the guy you're going against is Tiger Woods or Dennis Conner, because there are those guys too. And I think it's
Yep.
that great combination. But I certainly think there's two sides of that sword, and certainly in both cases, and we all
Well,
learn.
you know what?
We all learn
I,
from
I
that.
will I will throw in that as I've coached or been with my son with his hockey. There's talent and then there's hard work. So you can have all the
Yeah,
talent in the world. If you don't want to work at it, then you're going to get spit out the back at one point. Maybe not all the
exactly.
way out the back, but hard work will or dedication will probably surpass you. And I think that's where the focus on the data could really help those that if you don't have all the natural talent, but you have an understanding or a desire to really get the data, then you just have that one spot. And look, you don't have to win a race by a mile. You have to win it by less than an inch. And that's it.
No,
So,
and I was, again, a long-term coach. I'm a high school and college coach, and I always think of I'm
exactly.
walking across the lacrosse field this past week, and I see a 6 and 7 year olds, and these cameras that you can now take that have the three video
Yeah.
cameras, and they can cover the field. And I'm seeing 8 or 9 of these cameras up all over the field that were obviously put up by fathers for 6 and 7 year olds.
Yep.
And I'm
Yep.
guessing they're going to go home and analyze all of the the various this, that, and the others. And this particular level of lacrosse, they don't even have goalies. They put up like elastic sheets out in front of the net with
Yep.
holes in them. I mean, I'm not sure what the cameras are for, because they're not. If you want to take a picture of your kid, take it from the sidelines. But it's that interesting blend of those processes, because it is what it is. And they do what they do.
Yeah, the parental part. Look, I've fallen down that trap myself. Videotaping and trying to analyze. But I've always been a coach, like yourself. Has always been a coach all my life. So it's about teaching, but you have to be careful of taking it too far. 6, 7. Yeah, I'd almost look at the Norwegian program where I don't think they really do anything on a high competitive level until after they're 14. It's all about having fun and a good time. And that's the part that I always, I push to my kids was, look, if you're not going to have fun, you're never going to be good at it. It doesn't matter how much, if you're not having fun doing it, find someone else that's fun.
The Norwegian national ski team, we work with them on their North American on part of the NORAM series. I help coach some of those kids. I've told this story a couple times. We're talking to them last year, first time I was with them, talking to a bunch of 12 kids, and I'm trying to tell stories. Lady walks over and says they don't speak English. Well, I was going to find a translator, and off we go and get the rest of it. When they hired Chad Bastard to take over the Norwegian program about 12 years ago, he was part of the U.S. national program. When he took over their entire ski program, they interviewed him for a local show here, and they asked him how, when he looked at it, what were they going to do? He says, "We're just going to do everything the Americans don't do." And they all of this influx was having, they don't keep score, but then when they get the kids up to an age where it matters, then they put every bit of technology, every bit of opportunity, every bit of financial process, and that's why they've now become the greatest winter sports program in the world, is related to Olympics. But if it wasn't for the thousands of kids that they put into the program at the base, they wouldn't have had those kids at the upper end of the process. And I think that goes back to
Yeah, it's funny. The Norwegians had still do probably, but had one of the top WASP programs going for a while, and there were more women doing the WASP than the men. So they definitely had the right recipe in building their program.
Well, Tyler, I appreciate your time. This has been a really fun conversation, and with your background, the last question I want to ask you is, and I've asked this of every Olympian I've ever interviewed in any sport. You pull on the Canadian numbers in 2012. Obviously, your dad did. Just get your own personal 30-second recollection of what it's like to sail for your country, because I think that's maybe the greatest honor as an athlete could ever have.
Yeah, look, it was not necessarily expected, right? I was 42 when I finally made it to the game, so it was one of those, the stars aligned in so many different ways: funding, opportunity, obviously results were there. The journey throughout the 3-4 years of going up the mountain, if you will, those were great moments, great memories. The actual Olympic Games, it's very quick, right? It's 5 days. That's it. Most of the times, I mean, I didn't do the opening ceremonies. It wasn't, we're usually a satellite venue, so I didn't get to do the opening. But you know what, seeing that huge Canadian flag on your sail, and knowing that you're one of very few that get a chance to not only just compete in the Olympics, there was only 16 stars competing. Having the opportunity to represent your country, yeah, it becomes more and more valuable as time goes by and you see the significance of it. For me, it was, look, the other interesting part is I grew up a lot. I grew up around Olympics. And the aura of the Olympics, if you will. My father went to the Olympics, so you had Olympic gear. My aunt went to the Olympics twice in skiing back in the 60s, so we had posters and all that kind of stuff. So we were just around the Olympic movement, if you will. So it wasn't hugely foreign to us, if you will, as we grew up. So it was kind of like, I checked the box,
Right.
at that one point. But again, you know what? A great experience. It's not easy. And it's way hard. I mean, I think about it when my father went versus when my brother went versus when I went to now. 3 completely different games, if you will. Skill's always going to be, the best still get to go, but the cost and the time commitment. I mean, they're professional, right? You don't, if you want to go to the Olympics, you're not doing anything else.
Right.
Which is the tough part. You're traveling the world, and when I did it, I think I was probably gone 280 days throughout the year, just competitions and training camps and all that. So look, a lot of fun, made incredible friendships around the world, have many really fun stories that I could tell, and competitions that went well, competitions that didn't go well, and all the stuff in between. And I'm glad I had the experience, and I draw a lot on it.
You had to have a
Draw.
you had to have a real solid feeling when Paul Carrad won this year. That had to be something that was, as a star guy, that had to be a terrific thing for you.
Yeah, well, look, Paul's he's incredibly competitive guy, right? You don't
Right.
have the success. You don't have the success as he's had in all different aspects of the sport: ocean racing, starboat, America's Cup, all those kind of pieces. And I saw it. My first time I ever really met Paul was like 1996. At the Bacardi Cup, and seeing him going to the gym and all that kind of stuff before gym was actually something we did. And to see him doing all the different regattas and sort of sticking to it, and what's beautiful about it is that he does it because it's the love of the game. He
Right.
wants to win nothing, but he loves the Star. He always comments that the Star is that one class that he will never leave. So, which goes back to the point, is foiling going to take over? Well, no, you got guys like Paul who's doing a great job in supporting the whole foiling movement with A1R, but if he has a choice, he's going to a Star Regatta. So you're always going to have those stalwarts as long as they're still kicking.
Success in later life in the mature years just settles a little better because you have an appreciation for it that you might not have had at an
Yeah.
earlier age. That's all.
Well, what did I think he won the Worlds in '88
Yeah.
and then 26. So I mean,
Yeah.
that's a long time coming in between worlds. But he had a great crew. I have to say that Frida was probably pulled a lot of the weight. But again, Paul's one of the goats of our sport.
Tara, thank you so much. It's been one of the best conversations we've had in a long time, so I appreciate it. And you have a great summer.
Pleasure. And I don't know when this actually will come out, but I can tell you we have the high school college WASP regional championships will be in Muskegon Yacht Club on May 9, 10. And when we talked earlier about the hubs, Muskegon very well could be one of the Midwest hubs coming this summer. So there'll be more access and availability to get your foiling fix.
Thank you.
I want to thank Tyler for spending some time with us. That's that interesting question about whether or not foiling becomes a part of sailing or whether that's the future. I hope it's not driven necessarily by television revenue, at least at the top ends of things, because there's certainly a lot of boats like mine, old ones, that don't have that opportunity, but we'll see. But we appreciate Tyler coming aboard to have that discussion. And we'll see you hopefully within the next week with some highlights and maybe a little trip down towards Lake Erie. And for all the guys in back, we'll see you soon.